Okay, welcome to part 3, looking at Gwendolyn Brooks' poem, We Real Cool, and thinking about it in terms of how do we write some close reading, about 1,000 words on it, thinking about her use of line and image. Remember, we left off on this idea of the what, the how, and the why, which helps create a thesis statement. And that allows us to kind of think about how this poem operates, come up with an argument, and then develop it from there. So what I've been doing in the time in between these videos is I've been working on the rough draft of a paper that I'm asking you to write to sort of show you what my process is and how I would do this. Whether or not this is going to be super beneficial for you, I don't know. I certainly hope so. You get something out of this. I'm going to point out a few things as we go on this one. So I just wrote this. It's pretty rough, but I've tried to make sure that you know that from the beginning. A couple of things I want to point out. First of all, notice the formatting, following the rules earlier. Sorry, I got to set my timer. My fault. I guess. Sorry about that. Okay, so notice a few things. Student name here. I went ahead and I put the date the paper will be turned in on put that in MLA format, which is date, month, year. I like to do that, and I'd like for you to do that as well, because that's really about, first of all, if the second line of your paper is wrong, right? If you put the wrong date here, that shows me you just didn't quite take your time with it, right? So solve this problem before it happens, okay? Same thing here. Eventually, I'll add my word count. You can see right now I'm about 345 words. I've gotten through the epigraph and some sort of really pretty rough openings for an intro into a summary, and I'll explain that in detail. But really, I'm trying to get into what I mean by cherry picking and what I mean by analysis. So I want to tell you right now that this is going to be a lot wordier than the final draft would be. So 345 right now, I'd probably want to cut that down, probably about 200 words, maybe, give or take. But I don't know. I got to keep working on this one. And plus, I write a lot, so I know that I can work with this and revise this because I know the practice. So my first drafts are always going to be wordier than my last drafts. You may not be the same way, but I want to stress to you that revision is always really helpful. So I had my title here. Notice that I'm putting the title of the poem into quotes because individual poems are always in quotes. Titles of books are always in italics. So when there's a part to a whole, the part receives quotation marks and the whole receives italics. The world's kind of burning right now. Do we need to know these things? Is it super important? I mean, we don't need to know them enough to memorize them because, whatever, write them down on a note card if you need to. But it's just, again, showing that you get the basics. Get the basics, and then we can pay attention to the more complicated ideas that you want to arrive at, and I want you to arrive at as well. So I would obviously delete these in a rough draft, but I like to just put these in here to have a sense of where I'm at. So this is my introduction. Only 24 lines long. We Real Cool manages to tell the story of a group of young friends somehow doomed to die and to die soon without wasting a word. The poem commemorates the lives of these friends, let's just say friends, by its use of line and iconic contemporary American images. Okay, so that's kind of a thesis statement, right? I'm making an argument that it's a commemoration, that it has to do with friendship. I'm going to look at line, and I'm going to look at not just image, but I'm looking at something I'm calling iconic contemporary American images. And I'm going to, in the paper now, try to prove that. So I kind of have to prove a number of things based off this one paragraph. First thing is I'm making a claim that this is telling a story, that it's a narrative. So if I want to keep that in there, I'm going to have to prove that. I have to think about, what is a story? What does it consist of? Is she utilizing that for a reason? And when the poem is utilized in such a way, what does that tell me beyond anything else? So I don't know if I'm going to keep that word. One thing I want to point out is that I'm not calling it a story. It's a poem, but I'm saying that it tells a story. There's a difference between the two. So we call a poem, but a poem can still tell a story, right? Just like a story can be poetic. All right. So I'm not trying to say that they are the same thing. And that kind of precision is that just shows again that you're paying attention and you're doing the basic work so that you can build onto something larger. But what I am trying to say here is that it doesn't waste a word. So notice I've already included in this paper twice the word approach, like that there's minimal amount of information in here. So that's key. I can also talk about that a little bit, but this is the big thing. This is the word that I have followed up from, I think, the second video, maybe even the first, that it's a commemoration. So I'm still working in that space. Notice I haven't really said anything about the visual representation, but that's really important to me. So I might include here in a parenthetical But maybe I want to deal with that at some degree. And then I'm going to move forward so that I can start talking about the analysis part. But I'm going to revisit this. Right, this is really rough. This it's saying something. I think it's close to a thesis. I think I'm working in an okay introduction, but I don't quite feel like I'm precise enough yet. But I don't know yet. I kind of have to do the work to figure that out, like I was saying in the last video. I'd like to have a brief summary of the poem. That way I know that I know the content and that I know my reader knows the content. And that way that, I can now kind of be, I can be a little bit more precise because you know the information as well as I do. Notice it's pretty short, 1, 2, 3 sentences. That's great. I should be able to summarize pretty much anything in 3 sentences, beginning, middle, and end. I can move on to the next thing. So having a clear summary, I think this is pretty clear. I haven't really looked over it yet, so this is all pretty rough. But I'm trying to get through everything from a group of friends. They're, I think, mid to late teenagers, given the fact that they're skipping school. They're hanging out here at the Golden Shovel. They stay, they play games, they drink, listen to music. They don't die. I think that's important, right? They don't die at the end of the poem, but they say that they're impending dooms. They're matter of fact. So that's how I read this poem. You may pull out something a little bit different. You may see something else inside of your summary. That's fine. This, I think, will serve my purpose for so far what I think. Again, I'm always going to have to edit this, so I'm going to have to get this back down. So I'm going to jump right into the poem. I like to start from the beginning of the poem, looking at a particular thing. So I have a couple of things here. I begin by pulling down the epigraph. Now, this still very much needs a topic sentence. And there's going to be a whole video on that, but I need to lead my reader into what I'm about to talk about and why I'm going to do it. And right now I haven't really written that because those are actually kind of hard for me. Transitions are from paragraph to paragraph. So what I like to do is actually have written most of the paragraphs so that I can go back and then, actually introduce the ideas that I'm going to get at, as opposed to trying to force a topic sentence into this and then always trying to work within that space. It's way easier for me just to think it through and then see what I'm actually saying and then write a topic sentence that reflects the work I've done and not try to write work that reflects a topic sentence that I haven't had a chance to really think through. So that's my recommendation. Topic sentences, thesis statements, transition sentences, all of these are for later drafts. So, and if none of this is clear, if some of the language I'm using doesn't make sense, or if you just logically isn't connecting, you email me and please let me know, and I'll try to follow up with those videos this weekend so you have something else to look at. So what I've done here is I pulled out when I say pulling out the epigraph, I've taken the poem, right? I've taken the language of the poem and I put it directly into my paper, which is what I always want to do when I'm doing this. This is step 1 of knowing your analytical information. So I'll try to keep up a line with that one, is let me see the poem. So you need to be quoting directly from the poem. Every time I read a close reading essay, I'm looking to see quotation marks. You should be showing me the primary text, because if you're not, then you can't be conducting analysis. The only way analysis works is when you're looking at language and line and image directly as the text presents it to you, right? The message is part of the form of the poem. So I'm looking for that. And then the next thing I look for is what I call cherry picking. So notice 2 other things here. I have put it into quotes because it doesn't, it's not my language. I'm showing that that's Brooks. I have here, I've done it in all caps because that's how it's presented to me. So I'm going to have just repeat it the way I see it. This is a line break, this backslash, whenever we're writing in Word, and we want to show that there's a line break. So if we go back to the poem real quick, and I'm going to share that with you just really fast so we can see it. Notice that this is the end here, right, the period, and we start a new line over here, and of course we have the period there. So I'm trying to reflect that in mind. I'm sorry if that's discombobulating to see me go back and forth like that, but I'm trying to show that here. With that, that's a formatting rule. Just get used to using them. Write it down somewhere. Take a picture. So this doesn't really belong, but it's a good reminder. I don't want to summarize right after the quote. So I see so often, and one of the most common sentences that I end up marking out and just say get rid of this is that right after a quote, somebody's going to say, in the epigraph we see that there are pool players. There's 7 of them there at the bar. And then you move in, you actually start doing some more analysis. But you don't owe me that first sentence because I don't, I got that. We're good. I got the content. So you need to start telling me right away to begin with analysis. And this is what I mean by cherry picking, is that what I've done here, okay, here is a smaller version of the entirety of the thing that I've pulled down. So when I pull something out of a poem and I put it into my paper, I'm saying to the reader, like, hey, all of this is super important. And then after that, I go ahead and I pull down the smaller part and I say, and I'm going to tell you why that's important. So I'm going to show this to you right away. So I'm not looking to summarize information. I'm looking to bring poetry in. So I'm always grading. I'm looking for, you have longer quotes that are taken directly from the text, and then you cherry pick from those. You take the better parts, cherry picking like an image of, like, I don't actually know, like, what is it? Are cherries just better if you pick? I have no idea what that means. I've been using it for years, but staring at my own face. So, you know, you're just basically, but it's the image of, like, I take this and I pull this down, and I'm going to talk about this now. So to build it back up to something larger, I'm going to focus on something very small. I always use the, like, is it chemistry where you find precipitate, right? This little thing at the end of the Bunsen. I don't know. Been a long time. All right, so Bunsen. Notice how the epigraph. Okay, so first, this is what I start with. The first image is a collective of people who either identify as or are identifiable as the pool players. So notice, I'm not telling you the content. I'm saying, I'm making a claim. I say image. I'm saying that it's a collective of people who either, I'm talking about identity, or they're identifiable as the pool players. Okay, so I'm trying to say, let's pay attention to this first. The first thing that is seen, it's an image. This is definitely helpful for an image-driven paper. Notice how the epigraph uses the definite article the. Now this is kind of being, this is very like a nuanced way to think about how to do analysis. This is deep cherry picking. That's not a good metaphor, but you get it, like stretchy cherry picking that, like, my arm up. So the there is an even smaller part of this small part, which is an even smaller part than this large part, then it's an even smaller part of the whole poem. So I'm trying to get you down to just the thing. I want you to look at the thing to see if I can't prove something there. So notice how the epigraph uses the definite article the, which suggests that these particular people are known as the pool players, as opposed to some pool players or some people who play pool. Instead, the identity of the group is predetermined, based, it would seem, on the activity of playing pool. So I'm down now where I'm making an argument basically that the definite article the within the collective image of the pool players within this epigraph, that what this tells me is that there's something in here about identifying. Right? Being identified, having a personality, having not a personality, but like having an identity thrust upon you, or taking one on that is based on one particular action that you do that is in no way encapsulating. So the thing I'm going to think about is fragmentary, the fragmentary identity. And I want to, like, return to this. So this is just kind of notes for myself. Typically, maybe I'll bold this or something so I don't lose sight of what I'm trying to do, lose sight. I'm getting up at 12 minutes. So note 2, okay, so then I'll move on. Note 2, how the first line of the epigraph ends with a period. So now I'm being as nuanced as I can be, right? I'm down to, like, the dot on the page. And I'm gonna make an argument here, but the sentence is a fragment. So I think this is cool, right? I think what I did is cool. Sorry. There's something here that we don't have to complete, that we don't have to be able to, that's a gross sentence, but I'll talk about gross sentences later. There's something here that we don't have to be able to complete the sentence, suggesting either that this information will always be missing, or that the poem will fill us in on the action needed to get the full information. That's kind of a clunky sentence, but basically what I'm going to revise that to is to basically, we start with the fragment, right? All we're getting is, like, part of their identity, a fragmentary identity. It's enough to work with, but it's not necessarily super helpful in understanding who a person is. Who is that guy? Oh, he's a pool player. Oh, I mean, that's about what I got, right? So I'm seeing if they're going to fill anything else in with that one. But also in terms of sport, pool is a game of geometry and physics, motion, friction, and precision. Because the poem introduces them as the pool players, a known entity defined by their pool playing, it makes sense to assume that these players have enough skill to justify this particular identity. That they have skills, in other words. So it's about, they have a talent for something, but it's still a fragmentary identity, which I'd probably include now, right? But this is still fragmentary. And then, like, I'd come back. So this is what I mean. I'm running a little bit long, I apologize. But this is what I mean about trying to pull out cherry picking. What I mean is that we start here with the golden shovel, right? The whole line, the whole 2 lines, I should say. Then I pulled out the smaller phrase, okay? And then I pulled out a smaller phrase, and then and then I pull out the punctuation. Now, it's also that I can talk about the image, right? I'm still really talking about the image, the collective image, but I'm looking at these other nuanced things to show you that the image is kind of a complicated image, and there's a lot of information being given to me through just looking at individual words and paying attention to how they operate together. So obviously, the next step I would do, and I will probably do for us, is to look at the second line, and then you can start seeing how these things may connect and how we can look at them a little bit more directly. So if you have any questions or comments, please let me know, and I can move in that direction as I post these. And then I'll probably try to do at least a couple more today and this evening, maybe not just on the poem, but a little bit broader about some other topics. So thank you, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions you want to follow up on.